To the first show one more time. Today is Friday. Juma Kareem to all the Muslims out there, and I hope that today, being a Friday and being Ramadan, it comes on a special plate for you to go to the mosque and pray. But remember, even when you want to go to the mosque and pray, conjunction is something that is still uncalled for, since we're still fighting against the COVID-19 situation. Now, my name is Latifa Hamid, and for you who this becomes the first time to join us on the first show, we usually discuss a number of issues, and we start from, of course, the stories that made it to our top table, and then we go ahead to discuss the topic of discussion where we involve you in the discussion, and then later we have global exploration and then the lifestyle segment. Now, today we'll be talking about a number of things, including NRM's decision to pick the speaker, and then we'll go down to Erias Lukwago, who is back in the country, and he has some major concerns about the condition of the health sector of this country and the hospitals, and the fact that he believes that we do not have good enough doctors in Uganda, hence the reason as to why he was flown out of the country to go to Nairobi to receive treatment. Now he's back, and he has some recommendations that he says are quite good if the government could only listen to him. However, the question is, will the government listen to him, given that Lukwago is known for being an opposition member of parliament, changing from DP to FDC, and he's now the Lord Mayor, and he has been the Lord Mayor for quite some time. Now, let's look at that video. Let's start from that conversation, and then I'll come back to diverging the little details of the other information that we have for you on the table. Now, our desk has that presser that Erias Lukwago held when he came back into the country. Remember, during the burial of recipient Luanga Kizito, Lukwago almost passed away in church during the mass, and he passed through the back door and he went out, and later on he was flown back to Nairobi. This becomes his third time to be flown to Nairobi to receive treatment. Now let's look at that particular footage, and then we'll be right back.
Lodi wa Kampala Erias Lukwago yakomyewo olunaku lw'eggulo okuva mu ddwaliro e Nairobi gye yali yatwalibwa oluvannyuma lw'okuzirikira mu Kereziya bwe baali basabira omwoyo gw'omugenzi Ssaabasumba Sipiriyani Kizito Lwanga. Tubaddeko mu mboozi ey'akafubo naye era n'atunnyonnyola ku kyamuviirako okuzirika.
Olugendo terubadde lwangu. Kuviira ddala mwezi gw'omwenda omwaka oguwedde nzize ntaataaganyizibwa, era nga bwe mukimanyi nagendako e Nairobi ne nvaayo nga nzijanjabyeko, era abasawo baŋŋambye nti yali nsobi.
Ono agamba nti yazze ng'atawaanyizibwa endwadde okumalira ddala ebbanga ddene, era n'emabegako mu biseera by'obululu yagendako e Nairobi okufuna obujjanjabi, wabula yavaayo mangu nga tawadde basawo obudde bumala. Era agamba nti osanga kye kyaviirako n'okuddamu okufuna kaamunguluze eyamugwira.
Naye ng'ate nange nalina pureesa y'akalulu, kuba twali mu biseera by'akalulu, naye okuviira ddala awo ne mu kalulu wonna embeera nga si ya mulembe. Nafunjeko ku busobozi nze obugendako e Nairobi n'enzijanjabirwako eyo, naye bameka bannayuganda abalina omukisa ogwo. So tuleme kulyazaamanya bannayuganda. Mwami Yoweri Kaguta Museveni ne gavumenti yo muleme kulyazaamanya bannayuganda.
Erias Lukwago agamba agenda alabawo k'enjawulo newankubadde akyali ku ddagala, wabula ebimuluma byo aganye okubyasanguza.
Enjawulo y'amaanyi yadde nkyali ku ddagala, kuba bampadde eddagala pitirivu. Box ziri mu nnyumba wano ez'eddagala ly'enkyaliko. Nkyali eyo treatment, naye at least amaanyi go ngalina. Nti tests kyensooka okwebaza nti omubiri gwange gwonna baagukebedde.
Wetumubuuzizza ku nsonga lwaki takozesa malwaliro ga mu Uganda, Erias Lukwago akinnyonyoddeko bw'ati mwagambidde nti tegalina bujjanjabi bumala ssaako n'abasawo abakugu. Era ono agenze mu maaso n'enyamira minisitule y'ebyobulamu engeri gy'ekolamu emirimu gyayo.
Obulamu awo buli era wonja kupozingiramu ŋŋambe bannange. Eggwanga lino liryazaamaanyiziddwa nnyo abalikulembera ne bannayuganda balyazaamaanyiziddwa nnyo. Kuba amalwaliro gali equipped bulungi okuba n'obusobozi obusobola okunoonya kubanga obujjanjabi obutuufu butandika na kumanya bulwadde butuufu. Ate obulwadde obutuufu tosobola kubumanya okujjako nga bunoonyerezeddwa akyali muto nga tannakula tannatuuka ku level 4 oba ki. Kakati nze ekisooka okwebaza nti baakebedde buli kimu ne bazuula ebinnuma.
Ku nsonga y'emirimu gye, Erias Lukwago ategeezezza nti agenda kutandikirawo okukola emirimu gye mu bbanga ttono kubanga waliwo by'alaba ebikyagaanye by'alina okukolako naddala ku butale.
Now that is Erias Lukwago explaining about the issues that he went through and the fact that he is sick, but however he refused to divulge what exactly he is going through and what illness he is suffering from. But a number of people have said that what Lukwago is going through is high blood pressure and there has to be a change in his blood once in a while due to the conditions that he himself has refused to talk about. Now, he has been flown to Nairobi on several occasions and we've seen him being put on an oxygen mask, and there is fear, however, for Lukwago's life. But his concern is that he's getting better and he's on medication, but he calls upon the government to increase the budget on the health sector in Uganda instead of concentrating on the security sector in Uganda, which he says right now is receiving the lion's share of the budget. Now, that is it from Lukwago. However, the Central Executive Committee of NRM is also planning to meet very soon. And on their plan to meet, they say that the retreat in Chankwanzi that will be ending on the 29th of this month, or next month, actually not this month, in May, will be looking at a number of discussions. And the most important discussions in this retreat is that of the speakership competition. If you remember, Kinley Olanya went to the retreat in Chankwanzi, while Rebecca Kadaga said that he would not go. Now, regardless of the fact that President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni had told him that they should not continue with campaigning, Olanya was campaigning underground, according to the information that we got while he was in Chankwanzi. And he was introduced formally to all the newly elected MPs while in Chankwanzi. Now, the other position that Kadaga is questioning is the fact that the CEC and members of NRM are in support of Olanya. Kadaga says that is not true, and she knows that these people are actually supporting her. Now, what is happening between Kadaga and Olanya and the NRM caucus comes from a very long decision that was made in 2016 between the three parties, saying that Kadaga will only be the Speaker of Parliament for 10 years, which she has ultimately done. And they said that after the 10 years, the deputy, that is Jacob Olanya, who has also been a deputy of the Speaker for 10 years, will take over the speakership position. Now, we're seeing that Kadaga has refused to accept the decision that was made in 2016, and she says she's coming back with her speakership bid and there's nothing that they can do to stop her. Now, before Kadaga became the Speaker of Parliament, Sekandi, who is now the Vice President, was the then Speaker of Parliament, with Rebecca Kadaga deputizing him as the Deputy Speaker. Now, after 10 years of ruling, the Sekandi became the Vice President. And now The president offered that position to Rebecca Kadaga after 10 years of being the Speaker of Parliament, but she declined the position, saying that this position is only going to be given to her as a status position, whereby she'll be unable to make any decisions or make any calls. Now, we were seated on the first show a few weeks ago, and we're discussing about the speakership bid, and if we think Rebecca Kadaga should be accepting the vice president position, and a number of you came up to say that it is wrong for Rebecca Kadaga to think that the speakership position is just there for pictorial view and it makes no decisions. And we looked at people like Specioza Kazibwe, who was the vice president of Uganda, the first and only vice president of Uganda. We haven't received anyone yet after that, and it was a hope of Ugandans that Rebecca Kadaga sat in as the vice president of Uganda, becoming the second female person to become the vice president. And people equated the position to what Samia Suluhu went through and the fact that she finally came back to be the president of the country, Tanzania, after Magufuli passed away. And they're saying that Rebecca Kadaga should sit in that position and use it because it's a powerful position to make decisions that she believes is good enough and strong enough for the country. So they say that the excuse that Rebecca Kadaga is giving for saying that the vice presidency position is not good enough for making decisions is a lie, and she only wants to stick to a position for longer than she should. While others amongst us said that we believe in Rebecca Kadaga and her powers as the speaker and the fact that she has been non-partisan in dealing with what she was doing in becoming the Speaker of Parliament. Now, all that conversation leads back to the table where the contenders on the speakership position is quite wide. When we see the number of people who are standing in these positions of the speakership in NRM, we're looking at Rebecca Kadaga, we're looking at the Rakai District Woman Member of Parliament, Juliet Kenya Matama, and we're also seeing Engineer Richard Sebamala, who is coming in on the DP ticket. We have Rebecca Kadaga, and then we have Jacob Olanya as the people who have expressed interest so far when it comes to the speakership bid. The 3 weeks Chankwanzi retreat is now going to have a sitting with the Central Executive Committee members of NRM to discuss who they will actually put their hands on and blessings upon to become the Speaker of Parliament. And we're waiting to hear from them next month to know what the decision will be. Now, this becomes a decision that all Ugandans are waiting to listen to because it's a decision of importance to Ugandans, and they're waiting with all their heart to see what the decision is. Now, NUP also took a 3-day retreat in Jinja, and they were also asking themselves who they would choose as the Speaker of Parliament. Until today, NUP has not given us the decision of who they want to represent the party as the Speaker of Parliament, but FDC has decided to go with Semujunganda, who had pronounced his interest in the speakership bid even before the party endorsed him. Now we're waiting for NUP. DP has already chosen someone to go, and now NUP is the only party that we're waiting for to choose the Speaker of Parliament. Earlier on, we had 5 members of NUP, big members, including Joel Sanyonyi, who had gone to attend Rebecca Kadaga's speakership announcement and saying that she's coming back one more time to renew her bid. And the announcement was that they had shown support to Rebecca Kadaga given what Robert Chagulanyi had said when he was in Kamuli campaigning, and he also endorsed Rebecca Kadaga, saying the people of Kamuli should vote for Rebecca Kadaga. Now, those people who supported Rebecca Kadaga were said to have followed that trend in order to follow and support Rebecca Kadaga in the speakership bid. But later on, the NUP held a presser and said, no, they're not supporting Rebecca Kadaga, and they will be making their own decision with time. Now, there's a committee that has been formed, according to Joel Sanyonyi in NUP, that will be calling for names from people who are interested in becoming the speakers in the NUP camp to bring in their letters so that they can be accepted, or they can look through them to sieve and see who can be a representative of the NUP party in the speakership bid. Now we're waiting to see what exactly the results with NRM and NUP will be as they come out and show interest in this speakership bid. This becomes one of the most interesting speakership bids that we have ever seen, because this becomes the very first time that there are a lot of contenders in the speakership position. Earlier on, it was mostly Kadaga and Olanya, and we know there has been a problem between Kadaga and Olanya. Kadaga accusing Olanya of being a coward in dealing with issues in Parliament, while Olanya is saying that Kadaga has been stifling his effort to chair even one meeting in Parliament, and she has refused to give him chance to practice his position as the Deputy Speaker in Parliament. Now, all those accusations that are being thrown off board, and we're waiting for the final result, because on May 12th, the President will be swearing in, and we will also have the Speaker of Parliament, who will be decided upon by the members of the 11th August House who have just been elected, and we're waiting to see. Remember, NUP has the biggest number of opposition candidates. Of course, NRM carries the biggest number still, and then we have these candidates who did not go through on any party ticket, and they came through as independents, and those are also there, and they also carry the hugest numbers. The independents are actually bigger than the opposition if you combine them. So if Samu Uganda gets the support of NUP and maybe some part of those who have come in as independent, we could see a move of him becoming or going closer to the speakership bid. But if he doesn't do that, and then someone from the NRM camp has support from the NRM members of Parliament and also has support from these other people who are independent but are leaning to NRM, we're seeing a position where the NRM ticket or the NRM party will once again take the bid for becoming the speaker, and they'll once again rule the House. Now we're waiting to see what will happen. Rebecca Daga has been accused of not supporting NRM as a party and being against it, and instead supporting the opposition. However, Kasula Lumumba says all these accusations and all these campaigns need to stop for now, because the speakership position competition in the NRM party cannot continue unless a decision is taken by CEC. A very interesting conversation that is, and we're waiting to see what the end result will be. Now, I want us to get out of Uganda a little bit in understanding issues that is happening in Chad. If you're to remember, Idris Deby, the president of Chad, passed away a few days ago as he had gone to check on his army as they were trying to deal with the insurgency against his leadership and against his country in what is named as a coup d'etat. And we see that after the president, Idris Deby, who was also scheduled to be here for President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's swearing in, died, his son was put into power. His son's name being Mahamat Idris Deby Itno. Was trying to do was create a sort of authoritarian rule and also a hierarchy kind of rule, whereby after he does, his son will take over, and it becomes more so a kingdom of some sort, and not a country that has a constitution. Well, that is what is happening in Chad, and we're waiting to hear what exactly will happen afterwards. Now, STV will be updating you on the issues of Chad, because it's quite important as an African country, and we have had a friendship with Chad as a country and Deby as a president. And like I said earlier, he was supposed to attend Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's inauguration, and unfortunately he's unable to. And that is the information that we have for you, and we'll definitely bring you more details later. Now, there's information that we have here about the nutritional levels in Uganda, and the Ministry of Agriculture has explained, and the Ministry of Health have also explained, that the level of malnutrition in Uganda is at a very high and very scary level, because of the fact of the food that is being produced, that is 30% According to the Agriculture Minister, 30% of the population is facing food insecurity despite excess production in various parts of the country. And they say that this malnutrition that is happening comes from a point where the farmers who are selling their food or creating food for the market are not getting enough money to be able to buy food for themselves. And we know that the president had said that he's trying to get farmers away from subsistence way of farming. And he asked most farmers in Uganda to get into farming that gives them money, or farming that is for exportation. And however, the Minister of Agriculture, the ministry says that despite the government's will in programming and increased investment in the agriculture sector to address food insecurity, we still have 30% of our people who are food insecure. Now, according to the statistics, the people are consuming around 1,860 calories instead of 2,200 calories daily recommended by Food and Agriculture Organization and World Health Organization. And that information was released by Mr. Pius Wakabi, the Permanent Secretary and the Agriculture Minister. And it comes as a concern because we are looking at a high level of stunting rate of 29% and the rate of anemia being at 50% among children under 5. And he's saying this is because of the calories and the amount of food that these children are consuming. Now, Mr. Wakabi attributed the shortfalls in food security and nutrition to weakness in the functioning of the country's food system, from production, processing, storage, markets, up to the consumers. Now, aside from this information, as we're speaking about the storage of food in the market, it reminds me of the other conversation that we're going to have a little bit later on about the concern of Uganda's maize according to the Kenyan market. Now, the Kenyan market has come in time and again to say that we have aflatoxins in our maize, and that particular chemical can cause cancer. And they have returned over 50 tons of maize back to Uganda, saying that it has chemicals. And that has been a concern in the Ugandan market, with a lot of maize producers saying that they are getting losses from their maize. Now, later on, we'll be discussing what exactly is happening in Kenya. And just to give you a tip of what we're going to discuss about is the fact that Kenya is now having a maize shortage, and they're looking forward to getting Uganda's maize. However, there has been a problem with certification in Uganda's maize because they had accused us of having aflatoxins in our maize, and they said that every maize exporter in Uganda needed to have a certificate, and they needed to check the levels of aflatoxins in maize. Now, Kenyans are saying they need the maize, and right now Kenyans do not care whether there are chemicals or not because their maize is running out. Kenya itself produces maize, but then what happens is that they use it for more than just human consumption. They use it for animal feeds, and now their production is not good enough, and they're hoping that Ugandans will be sending in production. However, Ugandans have been stopped, and people are now resorting to smuggling. That's a conversation that we'll be having later on. And of course, I'll want your input in that conversation, because a number of trucks that contain maize have been caught in the borders of Busia and that of Uganda, Kenya, Malaba. And people are now asking themselves, what next for Kenyans who are running out of maize, and what next for Ugandans who have maize in storage, abundant and a lot of maize in storage? What do we do with it is the question that we will be discussing a little bit later on. Now, let's come back to the information of malnutrition in Uganda, even when Uganda is known to be the food hub of Africa, the place in Africa where we have the most natural resource, the most natural food there is, and we're facing malnutrition. And what is the problem is what we're asking. Now, Mr. Wakabi is saying that the problem is in production, processing, storage, up to the consumer and the markets. And he argues that if only these farmers who are taking food to these other countries, or who are actually selling food, would get good enough money to take care of themselves, then these problems would not be happening. He says food and nutrition security remains a priority for the government of Uganda in articulation of the National Developmental Plan 3. Now, the target is to increase the proportion of population that is food secure from 69% to 90%. But how will we do that? Now, the National Planning Authority's Senior Planner for Agriculture, Mr. Wanda Olen Kahurubuka, said the country needs 25 trillion to address high levels of food insecurity and malnutrition. However, that money, the 25 trillion, according to Mr. Olen, is supposed to be for the next 10 years. And the situation has been made more tricky and worse when it came to the COVID-19 situation, with a lot of people starving. Remember when there was a program by government to give out food distribution to a number of areas in Kampala and in Wakiso and in Mukono, and unfortunately some people say that the food did not reach them. Of course, there was an issue of corruption, with a number of people being arrested by the State House Anti-Corruption Unit for buying food at very, very expensive prices, and they're looking for food that were expensive. However, they tricked people and they took very low quality food and said they were low at very high prices, and instead took that money. Now, people also accused the government of giving them food that was of low quality. People took pictures of the posho, people took pictures of the beans, people took pictures of every other item that the government gave them and said the quality was bad. However, the distribution only went through the first phase and did not survive through the second phase of distribution due to a number of reasons, one of them being shortage of finances. Now, when people were taking contribution to the office of the Prime Minister, cars were taken, foodstuffs were taken, eggs, milk, all of that was taken, and some people contributed money in the fight against COVID-19. I remember there was a joke about the fact that Coca-Cola brought jerry cans instead of bringing money. So Coca-Cola contributed around 20 jerry cans to the fight against COVID-19, and it was of great concern to people about how the biggest company in Uganda when it comes to beverages, Coca-Cola, could distribute such a very minor thing and say they have done their part in contributing to the COVID-19 part. Well, that was it on the lighter note. However, now coming back to the fact that we're having food shortage, or food insecurity and malnutrition in the country, it's of great concern because people are unable to afford to buy food for themselves, and the giving out of food only stopped in its first phase and it never continued. And even during the first phase, people did not get money. Now, our food system should guarantee producers sustainable income and improve their livelihood. The food system should also guarantee people in Uganda safe and nutritious food. And that is the information that was given by Ms. Agnes Chirabo, the Executive Director of Food Rights Alliance, a civil society organization that calls upon governments to have strategies that ensures that farmers, one, get good prices, and two, the food in Uganda is not as expensive as it is right now. While Mr. Antonio Corrido, the country's representative of Food and Agricultural Organization, called for engagement of farming communities to develop new strategies that will address the disparities in food and security. He says he's wondering how a country such as Uganda, with good soil and good natural food, could go through such incidences such as food shortage and malnutrition. Now, Frank Turiatuga, the Deputy Regional Director for United Nations Environmental Program, asked the government to work on issues around governance, system strengthening, and transparency to address these gaps. Now, I want us to go through some of the tweets that got my attention as we're discussing the different things that is happening in the country. But in accordance to the malnutrition and food security, even I am surprised about what is happening in the country and the percentages that have been given of the children who are malnourished and those who are suffering from anemia. A very concerning situation that the government needs to work on. Now let's look at the tweets that got our attention today, and every day we do this on the First Show, where we get the tweets that got our attention and we bring them to you on the screen. Now, the conversation that is taking place and pulling attention is that of Robert Chagulanyi and about his armored car and the fact that he's suing URA for failure to bring back his car. Now, that conversation will come in a little bit later, but there is a tweet from Hozi Keno Rugaba, who says that yesterday it was my great pleasure to hold His Excellency Matthias Scher, the German ambassador to Uganda, and Lieutenant Colonel Stefan Hassler, the German defense attaché at the SFC headquarters in Entebbe. We spoke of increased military cooperation between Uganda and Germany, and that is the tweet that I'm talking about, and that caught our attention. Of course, he shared pictures of the meeting that they had in discussing the military and the security concerns in the country. Remember, US was one of the countries that has slapped sanctions on Ugandan government officials, saying that they stepped on democracy and they also violated human rights. But Germany is still working with Uganda, and we have also seen that the UK is in talks and is working with Uganda. Now, those are some of the tweets. That is one of the tweets that caught my attention. The other tweet that got my attention, of course, is that of Bobby Wine, that says, after several attempts at my life, some friends got me a bullet-proof car. At first, all was good because it wasn't in my name. Interpol, police, forensics, and URA all examined it and cleared it. URA levied a tax which we paid. Hell broke loose when they discovered it was my car. Now, that is a tweet that was shared by Bobby Wine, and that is Robert Chagulanyi, the presidential candidate and chairperson of NUP. Now, if you remember the car issue that happened with Robert Chagulanyi, we remember vividly and clearly that what happened was that Robert Chagulanyi got an armored car. And he said that the armored car was got for him by his supporters abroad. Now, when the car arrived, URA later on said that they did not have evidence that that car was armored. When the car came into their grasp, they only later on found out that the car was armored, but while they had it, it was not declared that it was an armored car. Later on, Robert Chagulanyi took them to court but lost that particular court session because court asked him to take the car back to URA for them to look into it, and then they said that if Robert Chagulanyi did not do that, then the car would be impounded by URA. Robert shared a letter by URA, which will also be going through a screen, and the letter that is here by Robert Chagulanyi is about a civil suit by Robert Chagulanyi Sentamu versus the Commissioner General and URA. Now, Robert Chagulanyi has said he will sue them, for till now he hasn't received his car. And the last time URA talked to Robert Chagulanyi, they were asking him to go into the Internal Affairs office to talk about his car. Now, the letter says that following the re-examination of your client's motor vehicle Toyota Land Cruiser registration number, it was confirmed that the unit was armored. The details of ballistic protection were confirmed as 90 mm for the window upper plate glass and 6 mm for the bottom hull. It was also established that the declaration made vid customers' reference did bear falsehood of clearing it as a normal vehicle, yet it was armored, contrary to Section 203 of the East African Community Sections Management Act, and Customs has revalued the motor vehicle using alternative methods of valuation and appraised customs value of $166,700 US. That is approximately Ugandan shillings. You can see that right there, and that is 337,698,770 shillings. Please advise your client to liaise with the Office of the Assistant Commissioner Enforcement, who by copy hereof is requested to facilitate payment of due taxes and release of the client's vehicle. So now they have agreed to let Robert Chagulanyi have his car, but at that amount of money which they say he has to pay in order to get the car. Now let's look at what Robert Chagulanyi kept saying in his tweet. He said at first they claimed all armored vehicles must be cleared by the Military of Defense, but there was no law to support their ridiculous claim. They moved and sacked and demoted and persecuted staff who did their job and cleared the car, accusing them of not revealing that it was my car. Now, that is what Robert Kyagulanyi is saying. However, if you see the letter that was written by URA that Robert Kyagulanyi himself tagged in his tweet, the letter was saying that the vehicle was not declared as armored the first time it came. Hence, the money that was put on it was not an armored vehicle cash, but then later after revaluation, they put forward an amount of over 33 million. Now, the other tweet that Robert Kyagulanyi put was that it would be recalled that my two other vehicles were impounded in Arua in 2018 and they were never returned. Disports of all shades and colors have done all these things before, but they never win in the end. Examples are all over, and we shall overcome. Now, there were also responses from people who talked about this particular issue, and they talked about what Robert Kyagulanyi was explaining in his tweet. And Linda Chambade said, it is clear world famous will pass through that tweet and not read all those comments because of the words that were used in it. And then we have Son of Africa who says, okay, we'll now just leave the responses just to be fair, because the words that were used are extreme, and we'll let them go because of the insults that have been put on this particular tweets or responses. I'll ask my producer not to put them out there. But one thing that I know for sure is that all these people are asking for the government to rethink the strategy of asking that much money from Robert Kyagulanyi. There is a response that came in, and this particular person said, don't worry, Robert Kyagulanyi, we got you that car. We will also help you in paying off the money that they are asking for, as long as your safety comes before anything else. Now, those were the responses that a number of people gave in regard to Robert Kyagulanyi's tweet on the fact that they're asking for a large sum of money on his armored car, and he explained the incidents under which he gave them the car, and according to Robert Kyagulanyi, they knew that the car was armored, but then later when they found out that it was for Robert Kyagulanyi and not any other person, then it became a reason for them to call it back. He tried taking them to court, but he lost, and URA were emerged winners, and they took over the car. And as we're speaking, Robert Kyagulanyi still doesn't have his car, and until he pays this money is when he will have his car. Now, that conversation is taking over Twitter by storm, and everybody is being part of the conversation. And of course, our social media platforms, that is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, are right there for you. Give us your comments on what exactly you think about the URA impounding Robert Kyagulanyi's car and asking him to pay that amount of money. Is it fair? Is it true that Robert Kyagulanyi did not tell them that that car was armored before, or is it just a game? Now, all those questions I know are raging in your minds, and we'll have an investigative piece for you on this particular story. Now, allow me to take a break, and then we'll be looking at global exploration by Caro Tumwine, and then we'll be right back. Stay with us.